What's up, everybody? We're back with another new episode of the Last Wave podcast. We dive into topics like ghosts, UFOs, cryptids, nerd stuff, and conspiracies, and so much more. As always, thanks for listening. It means a whole lot. Check out the Facebook page if you haven't already. Same name and photo. Tons of cool stuff on there so far, and a lot more planned. I try to throw up a lot of things that I mention in episodes, like pictures and videos, so that's really your best way to catch it. Obviously, this is a podcast. You're not going to be watching this as you're listening. So I try to get all the information over there. So check that out and throw a like on some stuff. Follow the page. I do post previews as well and talk about upcoming episodes. So plenty of fun stuff. One more quick mention. You can now find us on Patreon. If you don't know what Patreon is, it is a website for creators like myself. If you've ever dealt with YouTube, you know they don't pay enough or at all. I've done content creation for over 6 years now, give or take. So I've never made a cent from YouTube. You got to have certain amount of subscribers, certain amount of this and that, follow guidelines, all that good stuff. Patreon.com is really helpful. You basically subscribe to me like you would to a Netflix, except I think I have it set for $2 a month, $5 a month, and $10 a month. Basically, what that gets you, $2 is you're basically just helping me out. You can donate $1 if you want to, $1 a month. Basically, that just helps me out. $5, you get some exclusive content as well as a shout out for being a producer, and $10 is more exclusive content. Basically, it's just a way to help me and help content creators follow their passion and actually get something concrete out of taking the time out of doing this. So it's really appreciated. The Last Wave podcast, you can look it up on there. Same name, same photo and everything. So please check that out and help us out a little bit. Like I said, I take this very seriously, and a lot of people don't understand. I'm pulling time away from the family just to seclude myself to knock out these videos every week. So it would really be appreciated. So enough of that mess. Thanks again. Let's jump into it for today. Today we're going over a very, very important legend. We're going over the Bell Witch today and the Bell Witch haunting. First and foremost, I do have a deep personal interest in this story. Without giving away any names, my family is actually connected to this legend distantly by two sides of the family. Some by marriage only, thank goodness, considering there are legends regarding firstborn sons and a horrible death. So, skated by on that one. Thankfully, it's just marriage. So I didn't really, hopefully I'm not part of that. I don't know. Maybe I should research that more. But I don't think I am, so all right, I should be fine. All right, so if you don't know what the Bell Witch is, this is America's first real documented ghost story. It's spun off books, investigations still today, and a couple of movies as well. It all starts with the Bell family, a family from North Carolina who ventured west into Tennessee and settled there on some nice farmland, around 300 acres actually. For around a decade, they did really well. Members of the local Baptist church, the father, John Bell, was actually a deacon there. And this is, 1800s. This is, like I said, it's America's first real documented ghost story. So everything was going fine for the family, but in 1817, things took a strange and terrifying turn. Sightings of strange animals around the property, like large or misshapen dogs or other things and creatures of that nature. Knocking noises came from outside the home walls and windows and the door. The sounds eventually moved into the house and included choking sounds, sounds of rats gnawing at bedposts, scratching, and of course, someone dragging chains. I don't know why that is such a classic. Even in the first ghost story, that just sounds classic. The sound of dragging chains. I don't know what that's about. Maybe I should research that a little bit. For over a year, the family remained silent and kept it, in close quarters. But eventually, the father did tell a neighbor, who he then invited to stay and witness the activity. The activity continued and was witnessed by the man and woman who visited. They suggested that others should be told, and a committee of locals was created to investigate America's first actual ghost hunt. So that's kind of cool too. Eventually, enough people saw and heard of these events to where word spread throughout the settlements and people began to visit just to catch a glimpse of the specter. With all of this attention feeding the spirit, it eventually spoke. When asked what it was, the thing stated it was a witch sent by a neighbor, Kate Batts. So people went on to call it as Kate or the Bell Witch. Now, there are conflicting reports as to why this lady would send an entity to harm the family. Some say it was because she secretly loved John, the father, and he turned her down. Others say it was to prevent the marriage of a Bell daughter to a local boy. They say this because over the next 3 years or so, John and the daughter Betsy got the worst of the encounters. From hair pulling, feelings of being stuck with pins, scratched, etc. John reported a swelling in the throat and a feeling of a stick being shoved into his throat. To me, that does sound like a form of voodoo, but it's so early on in American history, I'm not sure of the spread of voodoo into that area. Mainly early voodoo was brought over and spread through slaves, bringing over an early version of it, I would assume. I know the slaves did bring over, mysticism and probably very early forms of shamanistic rituals and that type of thing. So, it being Tennessee and not further south, I don't know where the slaves came from. So if they came from, different regions, I don't know. It's just a theory, but take it with a grain of salt, if you will. That definitely sounds like a form of witchcraft voodoo if you feel them being stuck with pins and things of that nature. That's what you usually hear in cases of voodoo. Let's see. Allegedly, Kate was becoming well known by this point, and it was said that she was very intelligent, knew much of the Bible, people's pasts, and even made future predictions. So it seemed to be open knowledge, and this is the actual lady, Kate Batts. So it seemed to be open knowledge that she had some ability in these fields, or given the time, it was a woman of just abnormally high intellect, and people were fearful of that type of thing in the 1800s. As I'm sure you can imagine, times were different. Apparently, in late 1820, Kate finished the job. John passed away, and many believed he had been poisoned by Kate. She even took credit for the death at one point. Also, the following year, the daughter Betsy did break off her engagement, so if it truly was Kate Batts being the witch or sending the entity, then she did accomplish her mission. However, there are a few other tales regarding this story. A story so old, surely some things were forgotten or changed or sensationalized by movies and books. I clearly can't substantiate a story this old, but I do want to share the other tidbits. So another earlier suspected reason for the haunting was thought to be because of the Bell children in the family. A nearby cave known as the Bell Witch Cave hid some secrets that the children actually stumbled across. It is said that a Native American skull was found in the cave, and two of the younger children brought the skull back to the home. Now, if you have ever heard one out of every 3 haunting stories in movies, you have heard of Native American burial grounds, and you should know how this is going to go. Shortly after the kids brought the skull back, it is reported that the prior events began. So there's always been this contention of what was it, a native spirit, just a ghost, a witch, or a combination of everything. Man, that would just be the worst. What a horrible time that would be, a combination of all of those. Also, a few things to note. There is a story of a family friend who witnessed the spirit activity. He chose to try and throw a blanket over the spirit, which allegedly worked. Then, holding tight, he threw the blanket into the fireplace. That did not put an end to it, but it sure beats any ghost traps I have ever seen on TV. Also, it is said that you should never take anything home from the Bell home, land, or Bell Witch Cave. As it is said, the home still stands, and they offer tours of all of it, including the cave. Now, this does happen from time to time. People take a rock or some small object, and then letters arrive to the tour company, including the object, and a letter begging for it to be put back. So it certainly sounds like some attachment and haunting still happens. that's definitely something you should learn. I mentioned in another one of my stories that I gained through the ad. There is just never a good place or time to take anything from a grave. Just realize that. Lastly, as I mentioned in the beginning of the story, it does have a connection to me and my family. So around 2015, I would guess, there was a series following one of the descendants of the Bell family. And that show is actually where I learned all this extra stuff. And the legend of the firstborn dying in a horrible way and all that. Because that is why the show was the main prospect of the show is the descendant wanted to try and break the curse because he and his son's life depended on it. They found no real way to stop the supposed curse. But there was a very interesting moment when they let John Zaffis, renowned haunted item expert, inspect the original Bell Bible. Now, this could have been, drawn up for TV, but as soon as the Bible was unwrapped, they all sat around the table, and as soon as he began, looking at the Bible and checking into it, basically stuff, there were noises, around them, knocking sounds, stuff started falling from the walls. It was all pretty crazy stuff to think that a story from that long ago is still held in such high regard and even fear today. Again, like I said, that series is where I learned all this extra stuff about just it being, because I am from North Carolina, so it's definitely possible. I can't 100% substantiate it, but the names do match up that I found in my research. So just know that I don't want to go too crazy into it and give out people's names and family names and all that shenanigans. But just know that it was very interesting. I was quite worried until I dug into it a little bit. I'm pretty sure there are a few things I didn't cover about this, but this will probably be one of my longest episodes by far. So we will leave it there more or less. This story is super interesting. I definitely suggest, as always, doing your own research, but in this story especially, if you have any interest in the paranormal at all, this is a story that you should be familiar with. It's one of, if not the oldest in America, and it's super, super interesting, from the misshapen animals, the shape-shifting stuff, the fact that someone was able to throw a blanket over this entity and throw them in a fire. I mean, it's got basically everything. It's not just some knocking sounds and the classic chain dragging. There's a ton there. Especially the cave. I mean, you can still go do tours right now. So I thought that was really interesting. That's a goal of mine, of course, to get there and go on the tours. I think that would be super, super fun and probably pretty scary. But this is a really popular story. Like I said, it's got movies. I know Ghost Adventures did an episode on it. I'm sure I've seen other TV shows and things like that do episodes as well. So still a riveting story today, even after hundreds of years. So really, really cool stuff. Super glad I got to share that with y'all. As always, thanks for listening, and check the Facebook page. As always, keep an eye on that. There's always kinds of good stuff on there. 100%. Again, throw a like on this video, subscribe if you haven't already. We're putting a lot of work into this. Like I said, I'm really digging in this. I'm having a ton of fun doing all this research, and I've got like 10 more episodes already written up. I know I say that nearly every time, but it seems like for every episode I do, I write 2 more. So tons more stuff coming up. Check out the Patreon page as well, because I will be doing exclusive episodes there as well. So again, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.